Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, where we get a look behind the book. Today I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Salisbury. She is the author of the amazing and magical story of the Wolf King, which I loved, and it's inspired by the Three Little Pigs. And then she's also the author of A Matter of Blood. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Your book is actually the first book I've ever read of a retelling of the Three Little Pigs, and I loved it. It was so well done. It was so creative. And
Oh, thank you.
what brought that about?
It started out as a way to keep my nieces quiet on a walk when they were young. We used to, every time we'd go out, I used to tell them stories and they would act it out while I was telling them it. And we were walking around Quar Abbey, which is a monastery with a pig farm attached to it. It's one of our favourite places on the Isle of Wight to walk. And I said, okay, what story do you want next? And they said, The Three Little Pigs. Okay. Doing that so that two girls can act it out. And they're like, and we want a happy ever after for the wolf as well. Okay, pigs are princesses, right, go. And it just grew from there. So yeah, that's pretty much the inspiration behind it. They are in the book acknowledgements, which they love. They're so excited about it. I'm giving them a copy for Christmas.
No, the book was so creative, and I loved how vivid your world building was with it. Like you could feel like you're there.
Yeah, I love that world. I have to completely immerse myself before I can even start writing. Otherwise, the words just don't come. So I kind of see it roll around my mind like it's a film in 3D. So yeah, I love the world. I actually have more stories planned in that world than I should have.
I think it's good. Not that I don't like them, but there's a lot of like Beauty and the Beast retellings or Rapunzel retellings or Cinderella retellings. And I'm like, there's so many other fables out there that
I'm going with fables because I like doing quirky things. I like doing things slightly differently from everybody else. And I don't necessarily even like it. It's just natural to me to come at things from an odd angle and, look at things from a weird direction. So fables seemed the way to go, I guess.
Yeah, and then you also incorporate kind of like a mystery because in this story we don't quite know what's going on through a lot of it. It's got like little hints of like an underlining plot that we're not quite sure what the angle is, and so it just keeps you like guessing until the end. But I am excited. So can you share what your next one will be kind of loosely based about?
Yeah, the next one is going to be called The Dragonstone. Hopefully, it'll be out roughly the same time next year. I'm aiming for one a year. And it is based on The Hare and the Tortoise. It's Joss's story. She's the middle sister, so it does follow her. I'm so excited about this one. I'm trying to think what I can say without giving it away because I always have huge plot twists in it. It's one of my favorite things because my sister reads my books chapter by chapter and a couple of writing buddies. And her reactions are the absolute best. When she got to the huge plot twist at the middle of The Wolf King, she phoned me and I didn't even get a hello. I just got a what the? Where's the next chapter? I was like, yeah, I haven't written it yet. And that was just hilarious. She's never going to live that down. In fact, she's going to be mad at me for mentioning it here, but yeah, so what? That's what you do to sisters.
No, I did that
Where the
same
relationship
thing.
in the book comes from is me and my sister.
Yeah. No, she totally has like company because I know exactly which part you're talking about because I was like, wait, what? So I did the same thing.
Yeah, I love doing that. A book isn't fun for me if it doesn't have those moments in it. So I've got some huge ones planned for the next one. At least I hope they're huge. They're going to be huge. So yeah.
So when you were writing this book, it's a magical world, obviously, but is there like an area that you referenced off of it that you traveled to?
This one is probably the first ever that I've kind of modelled on this country a little bit. My last one was modelled mostly on my time in Beirut, and the series before that was heavily inspired by my time in the Middle East as well. I lived there for a year and a half. But yeah, for this one, I thought I'd come home. So it's loosely based on England and maybe Scotland as well. I tried to stay fully Scottish, but the names These girls just refused to be called anything Scottish at all. They're like, nope, my name's Maddie. So, okay,
Yes.
fine. So, yeah, it's kind of modeled on that, but, bits and pieces from all over the place.
I didn't get to Scotland, but I got to London. I studied abroad for a while and I loved it over there. I wish I could have just stayed because it's so beautiful and there's so much history there.
Yeah, history. You can't go more than 5 miles without stumbling into another mansion or castle, run down or not. But yeah, we're very green. Lots of rain, but lots of green.
Yes, exactly, for sure. So when you're planning out your stories, do you do like a mood board or an outline, or are you more of like a pantser?
I call myself a pantser in the planning stage. And I know that sounds really odd, but I usually have a very basic idea, or I'll have the world and no story in it, or I'll have a character. But I start with the world and the character and I dump them in it and then just kind of follow them around for a while. So the story comes to me as my characters do things and let me know what's going on. But I do all of that in the planning stage because I hate having to rewrite stuff. So I don't want to write it all out in full and then have to change it all. So yeah, I do note form and follow them. I probably take about 6 months to plan books and then 1 or 2 months to write them. Or I used to before I got fibromyalgia. It's a little bit slower now. But yeah, I spend a lot of time in the planning stages, getting the ideas down. For someone who's so visual, I don't tend to do a lot of mood boards. It's all memories of places, but the visuals are very much in my head. And the characters have to be really solid. If I can't see a scene in my head, I cannot write it. So yeah, it's all planned out. And I have a notebook per, I've actually got one down there. I've been writing book 2 at the moment. I've got a notebook per book. And I have all the main ideas in the front and then I split it down into chapters or scenes. And any scenes that come to me in the middle of the night, I scribble down in the back. And eventually it turns into something approaching a novel.
So do you do like so when your characters come, are they coming in kind of fully there, or do you have to do like character interviews or profiles to like fully make them vivid?
A little bit of both. Sometimes I have woken up and the character has just been fully there with their story fully there as well sometimes. I know once the entire thing was just, and I had to write it down as quickly as possible to keep up with them. Other times I really have to sit with them for a while and yeah, I do character profiles to get to know them. Once or twice I've done character interviews, but mainly once I know them a little bit better. But yeah, the character profiles are very helpful. And recently I've started trawling through the internet finding images of them. I haven't done that with my earlier books, but I did with the Wolf King. So I've got clear pictures of what they all look like in my head as well. But yeah, some of them Parker, for instance, is one of the guards in The Wolf King. That was an unnamed, ungendered, like complete background character. And then she just muscled her way in, and now she's going to be a kind of a main character in the next book. Her and Joss are going to go off on an adventure together because Maddie won't let Joss go on her own.
Yes,
So
exactly.
poor
Oh,
long
I love
suffering Parker.
how she came about. I liked her in this one. Like you saying that now, I totally didn't notice that. Like I thought she was, a side character in this book. Like she was
Nope.
there.
She was just a guard. I think the first line was how I originally intended it, the guard outside the room. And that was it. It wasn't even a gender. And then as I went through, I thought, oh, I'm going to need a guard for this as well. It may as well be the same one. And I'm like, oh, I can't just call her guard anymore because I'm using her too often. She needs a name. So, well, she needs to be a she or a he to begin with. And I decided she. So I try to have a fairly even mix of men and women in different positions. Sometimes I do it deliberately, sometimes it just ends up that way. But yeah. And then she got a whole character behind her. And in the next book, she's going to get a first name as well, which is so funny. I'm not saying anything about that one. It's going to be a nice little surprise for people, but you're going to laugh when you find out Parker's first name.
Yeah. I just love the sisters, like their dynamics, and like you can see like the strong-headed one and the one that's kind of like, I just want to do whatever and I want to go and explore. And then you see the other one's a little more timid and like, wait, I don't want to go out there. I just want to be in my books and I want to read and I don't want you to bug me. And
Yeah,
like
just
you can
leave me.
see
Leave me
all
be.
their personalities. So it
Yeah,
was,
I love those sisters. I like sibling relationships. I've got them in all of my books.
Hmm.
That and grandparent-grandchild relationships as well, occasionally, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, siblings they're so fun to write. They're almost more fun for me than the romantic relationships because just the snark that you get between siblings is snark like no other relationship on this planet.
Yeah.
It's very much I can say what I want about my sister, but nobody else can say anything about her, or you could dead meat.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's
That's
that
good.
banter and it's like that, the jabbing at each other and
Yeah,
all of that dynamic.
yeah, I love it. And each of them was very clear because I knew, not when I first came up with the story, that was just for a walk around Quar Abbey, but by the time I started writing it, I already knew that there were going to be three in the series and that they were each going to follow a sister. And I knew exactly what each sister was going to be like. Um, Joss is based on the hare in The Hare and the Tortoise. So, she's flying around all over the place, moving before she thinks.
Yeah.
And Mouse is the mouse and the lion. She's already got the nickname. I don't need to
Yeah,
change a thing. So, yeah,
exactly. I have it half that battle done with naming it because you
I
got her
know,
there.
I know exactly who they are. But now I also have like 4 or 5 side stories and a fourth one that might tie them all together.
Universes of books. Like that is a phenomenal. Like I hope you write them all because it'll be really, really good.
So do I. It just takes forever. I
Yeah.
have about 29, 30 stories, mostly planned out, some of them fully planned out, and some of them even half written in, yeah. But yeah, they're all floating around in there fully formed. It's like, I've got to have the time to get them down.
Oh, I hope you keep going with it because I'm sure they'll be
Thank
great.
you.
So, how do you celebrate milestones when you're writing?
Food. As you can tell from my stories, food is very important to me. Yeah, mainly food. My mum and my husband give me little treats every so often if I'm struggling. I know I have a patchwork quilt on my bed that my mum gave me for finishing The Wolf King. She literally would not, she finished it when it was two-thirds written. She wouldn't give it to me until the book was finished. Thanks, mum. But yeah, there are things like that, and I get like, taken out for a meal, or maybe we'll go to the cinema or something, to the coast, whatever.
She made you that and then going on little adventures. That's fun.
Everyone in my family is very crafty and arty, so she does the patchworking, and we all have patchworked stuff. But yeah, it's very, very
I did.
cool. And I figured she's got that area covered, so I'll do other things, and then Katie can do other things again. We've each got our own niche, so
Yeah.
nice swapping gifts.
This can build on that since you said food. This is more of a fun question. So, what is your favorite beverage and snack while you're writing to have?
My favourite snack is Gruyere cheese and poppy seed twists. So like puff pastry twists.
Yeah.
You get them from Morrison's here. Their own brand, the Betsy, I'm doing a little promo for Morrison's. Morrison's own brand is like to die for. Again, sometimes my husband and mother keep them away from me until I've finished the chapter. So I write a chapter, I get two. But sometimes I'll just go and buy my own and hide them in the cupboard, and then I can eat them whenever I want. But yeah, those are my go-to snacks. In terms of drinks, probably just water the majority of the time because I tend to forget to drink sometimes. Either that or banana and strawberry smoothie if it's warm. When it's cold, my favorite hot beverage is what I call kettle tea. And again, you can blame my family for this. You can blame my family for a lot of things about me. And the fact that I write, everybody in the family is into reading. We just grew up around stories and books, and they would act them out for us at the end of the bed when we were young. We had the whole Tolkien series read to us when we were, I don't know, about 5 and 7, something like that. And the teacher's going, "You can't possibly have read that yet." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have." I got told off once for lying about having already read Romeo and Juliet when I went to secondary school. And my mum went in and said, "You're not giving her a detention for that because she has read it. She had it read to her at the end of the bed." So, sorry, digression. Yeah, kettle tea is a third milk, two-thirds hot water, and one sugar. And until I was about 10 or 11 years old, I thought that was normal tea because we wanted to have afternoon tea with my mum and gran when we were really little, and we weren't allowed to drink tea because it stunts your growth, caffeine, blah, blah, blah. So they made us that and told us it was tea, and we'd have it in the fancy little teacups and everything. And I got so used to it that I cannot drink normal tea now. I just have that instead. And it's great. It's good for the skin. Not so good when you're out and about wanting it in a coffee shop. Although it is
Yeah.
free. They don't know how to charge you for it, so they usually give it you for free.
Pivot back to what you just said because it was so funny about Romeo and Juliet. So I have been reading Shakespeare since I was 7, and I went to school and we had to do a book report, and I picked that, and my teacher told me no. And so my mom went to the school the next day, and she's like, "No, you're not going to tell her what she's allowed to read and not allowed to read." And so I did that for my book report when I was 7.
Exactly the same thing. And I couldn't understand why they didn't think that I'd read it. It's like, what's wrong with you people? There's nothing wrong with having read this, is there? But yeah, we got everything from Peter Pan to the classics to sci-fi and fantasy. Yeah, everything from a very young age. And all members of the family would read to us regularly. So that's where it comes from anyway. Blame them for my zany attitude towards writing.
It sounds a lot like my mom. My mom was like that. She'd read us stories for like 2 hours every night. It was like a ritual. So that's why I love books. I live in books. I try to live outside of the real world as much as possible and live in books.
Yeah, I don't blame you, especially in recent years. No, thank you. Just leave me in my book.
Do you have a moment that you can recall that has, like, in your journey with writing that's made you really proud?
Several. I'm trying to think of one in particular. And as always, your mind goes blank when you're asked these things. And then afterwards, you're like, oh, there was this time, this time, this time. I think the first time that somebody I didn't know and hadn't given a review copy to left a review of my book, that to me was just so exciting. I absolutely loved it. I was like, oh, someone I don't know has read my book and they liked it. They like me. No. But yeah, the readers' comments and readers' feedback are just the best for me. That and my sister screaming at me down the phone that chapter X has not been read yet. That was a good moment too. But I love it when absolutely love it when readers DM me and say, oh, I just finished your book and it was fabulous and I've reviewed it for you. And I'm like, yay, thank you. And I'm so glad you liked it. Now I can talk to you about it. Because most of the time I cannot talk to people who haven't read them yet because I'm too afraid of giving them spoilers.
Yeah, that's hard. It's like, what can I say? What can't I say? Like, you have to censor yourself to keep
Yeah,
it the integrity of the story.
exactly. But I'm always dying to know what they thought of the twists and whether they. I'm like, what did you think? Give me some feedback. Did it make you scream? Were you expecting it to be that person or this person? And yeah, I love that feedback. It's just fabulous. So
Yeah, for all you
favorite.
out there, definitely read this book if you love like epic twists. Wow. Definitely read it. Either way, read it, but if you especially read it if you love twists, definitely read it then because you will love it.
It's got to do.
So does writing energize you or does it make you tired?
Usually energizes me to the point that I cannot sleep. I quite often will write between like 12 and 4 in the morning because the ideas just keep flowing and I can't stop them. And then even when I do stop, it's playing around in my head. And also I get so excited about the ideas when they come. A couple of the twists for this one came to me late at night and I was just so excited about them. Like, I did not know that that could happen, but it's fantastic. And then I'm like, I can't sleep now. Great. That said, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia last year, 2023. So that has drained so much of my energy that when I do sit down to write, quite often I feel so sluggish that I really struggle. And that it pains me, to be perfectly honest. But it is difficult. And I've had to totally change the rhythm of my writing. I cannot stay up late at night writing anymore because I just have 0 spoons left the next day. So I'm still figuring that one out. Yeah, so we'll see.
Like a balance of when's the best time to write and when you have the most energy
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
your work done.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mornings are definitely out, which is why it's good when I'm talking to Americans because they're all like, oh, do you mind? It's going to be late at night for you. I'm like, not a problem. I come alive at night. But yeah, mornings have never been good for me. I've always been a night owl, so
Yeah.
perfect for American time.
Do you have anything that's like your writing kryptonite, besides health reasons that kind of get in your way sometimes with writing or set you on another path that you weren't planning on?
Family are the number one thing for me. They've always been the most important. So if it's a choice between spending time with my family and doing anything else, I will spend the time with the family. I actually quit full-time teaching quite a few years ago now to help my mum look after my grandparents when they needed full-time care. So I did respite for them, took them out once a week, helped her with the shopping and the cooking, and spent time with them so that she could have a break. So yeah, I've forgotten where I'm going with this now. The joys of fibromyalgia. The brain fog is another one. This is what it's like living with chronic illness as a writer, folks. 101. But luckily, I still have humour. That I would die if I did not have my sense of humour. My word, how would I cope? Anyway, where was I? You could feel free to edit all that out.
A struggle to find your time.
Yeah, for instance, this last week before my mum and dad were away, I tried to spend as much time with them as possible because I knew I wasn't going to see them for a whole month. Yeah, no writing got done in the last week at all. But now that they're away, I've picked up my pen and I've managed to write 2 pages today. Yeah.
So are your goals when you write more of like you want a scene or a certain amount of words or a chapter?
Yeah, I used to write a chapter a day because I had large blocks of time since I quit teaching. I've had large blocks of time during the day and I work in the evenings as a tutor now. So I used to always read through what I'd done the night before in the morning and look at my notes for the next scene. And then I'd go and have a shower and think about it in the shower and get the scene in my head. And then I would get out of the shower and just write it down. And once that scene was done, I mean, most of my chapters are pretty much scenes. That's how I split them. I don't split them by word count. So yeah, I would just do a chapter a day and get my books done in a month or 2 months. These days, I'm doing it by blocks of time, at least with this book. This is the first one that I've done like that, but it's the first one that I've really done since the fibromyalgia diagnosis. I just about got The Wolf King mostly finished. So yeah, this one I'm doing an hour. Well, I started out with 10 minutes, but I have managed to work myself back up. So I do an hour at a time, and however much I get done in that hour, that's how much I get done. So I'm hoping that I will eventually go back to a scene at a time, but
just
we'll
taking
see.
your body's cues and what's best. That's the most important part is to listen.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult dealing with chronic illnesses and mental health as an author. And this is something I feel very passionate about because I did not look after myself very well at all when I was a full-time teacher or when I first started writing. And I've suffered for that massively. I burned out completely and had to fully stop for almost a year. And now that I've got this chronic illness as well, it's made me look at the whole profession, look at any profession actually, any form of work in a whole different light. And we really, as a species, don't tend to take care of ourselves as well as we should. We're better at taking care of other people on the whole, but we also need to spend more time making sure that we're okay because, you can't put the mask on someone else until you've put the mask on yourself. Yeah. When people ask me what my advice would be for other authors coming up in the industry, I used to always say, write for yourself and learn the difference between critique and criticism. But these days, I say, get a work-life balance and make sure that you are taking regular breaks and looking after yourself. You are not your writing. You are you, and you've got to take care of you first. So, yeah, it's strange how everything has changed because of this, and I'm learning a lot more. I'm having to relearn a lot of things, but it is really, I don't know, maybe I can help other people in this way as well by voicing it because not a lot of us do.
So have you ever dealt with writer's block?
Yes, absolutely. Usually when I just cannot see the scene in my head and I go away, I have to put it down and leave it. There's no point, for me at least. I know some people say just write through it, but for me, I cannot write through it. If I try, what comes out is just trash. So I'd rather go away and do something else. So I'll bake or I'll do some card making or something else crafty or I'll do a puzzle anything where I'm not necessarily having to think a lot, but I'm busy doing something creative. Or I'll go for, well, I used to go for a walk in the countryside. Now I'll just go sit in the countryside. Anything like that, just to give myself a bit of a break from it. And usually after a while, something clicks. Usually the writer's block is because there's something wrong with it. And then when I figure out what the thing is that's wrong, then it clicks and I can start going again. Yeah, sometimes I try writing other things, like I'll go to a different story, but either way, I can't finish writing that story until it's gone.
Clear your head and to try, moving outside and letting it meld and then come back to it.
Yeah. And if that doesn't work, I'll just talk to my mum until something goes right as well. She gets a lot of, okay, so coming up in this book, I've got this. So she hears all the plot lines before I write anything.
A sounding board, and then something pops out, and you're like, oh, there we go. Mom's great for that.
And sometimes she just sits there crocheting, totally ignoring me. Sometimes she tries to speak, but I'm too busy walking backwards and forwards talking at her that I don't even hear it. So now she just like,
If you could go back in time and talk to your younger writing self, would there be anything that you would recommend or change or suggest to that younger writing self?
There would. Switch to fantasy romance earlier. That's going to sound terrible. The first books that I wrote were really heart books, but they were very niche, and nobody reads that. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, because people do have really enjoyed them and I've had very good feedback from them, but it is a small niche, and fantasy romance is just such this huge world, and I'm loving the people in fantasy romance. Have barely had any negative encounters in this sphere yet, which I know is extremely lucky, and I'm incredibly blessed for that. But it's just a great group of people who love all of it, and they will read all of it. There's no one out there that just reads one book. We are all equally able to get readers, and the more readers some people get, the more readers other people get, because we're all reading. Bleh. You know what I mean?
Sharing and talking up other books that we've enjoyed.
Yes, exactly. It's more a case of, if you like this, you will also like this.
Yeah, there's a plethora of books to add to our TBR. That's what I love about going on Instagram. Because I'm like, add that, add that.
Yeah. And fantasy romance readers are voracious. They will read way more than people who read other genres. So I love it. Plus, I love the stories. I mean, even when I was writing science fiction, I always say I write fantasy in a science fiction setting. And then I wrote fantasy in a steampunk setting, because I'm very heavily influenced by that side of it. But now I'm writing fantasy in a fantasy setting. It's just even better. It's so much fun. So yeah, I would say switch genres earlier. Or just write your fantasy books in a fantasy setting instead of sticking them in that sci-fi setting to begin with. You would have done a lot better. Got your name out there sooner.
So my next question, since you are a fantasy writer, is if you could be any mythical creature, what would you be and why?
Any mythical creature? Oh, I want to say mermaid. Especially a mermaid that gets legs when they're on land and then has a tail again when they go back into the water, because that's just the best of both worlds to me.
Shifter, like a mermaid shifter.
Yeah, a mermaid shifter. That's it. I would love to be a mermaid shifter, because I would love exploring the underwater realms. And I just like the idea of my hair floating around me in the ocean. Sorry.
So do you think you'll do a story involving a mermaid ever?
Probably. I am up for writing anything and everything, except horror. I don't like horror. But yeah, all the creatures, all the things. Yeah, this series has got dragons. It's going to have more dragons in it as we go along. And it's going to have more magic in it as we go along. They don't even know what magic is in the Wolf King or how it works, because they've just lost the art of it for so long. That's one comment that somebody said was, why don't you explain the magic more? I'm like, because they don't understand the magic more. I do. I could explain it fine, but then it would be info dumping instead of deep third perspective. So until they learn what it is, I have to keep stum. But
it'll slowly unfold as we read more.
Yeah, but it is coming. Maybe I could have mermaids in the ocean around it. Oh, now you're making me have even more ideas. No, stop. No, I have too many books to write already. I cannot have another one. And
You
yeah,
need
I
to
have.
do little novellas of books that are shorter. Be like fables. It'd be like a new take on fables.
And I've just thought of a fable that would go with it too. Okay, I'm writing this. I'll dedicate it to you. You came up with the idea, you get the dedication. That's how it goes with me. Yes,
Oh, I can't wait. Excited. You'll have to let me know when you get more with that idea.
I will. I'll let you beta read or alpha read, and then you can be screaming at me as well.
I actually just started doing that. It's been very different to see it from the other side because I've been an ARC reader for so long. To see it like earlier, so it's been a lot of fun, and I'm very honored that I've gotten that opportunity to do that. So
Yeah.
it's very fun for
Well,
sure.
I couldn't live without my alpha readers. They're just fantastic human beings. I mean, I have my mum and my sister, but I have two writing friends that are like sisters to me. Call ourselves the Three Strands. Um, yeah, I couldn't live without them, or I could live without them. Much as I hate to say this, Kathy and Sophia, I could live without you, but I would still breathe and stuff, but I wouldn't be able to write without them. They
Yeah,
give me so much confidence and help me through so many of the tough times with the stories that, yeah,
yeah. You wouldn't want to and not have them. So yeah,
no, I
that's
really wouldn't.
found family at its finest.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
So, what is the most difficult thing about writing for you?
editing. Gosh, that was a fast answer. Not editing while I'm going, I find very difficult because I used to be an English teacher. So that side of me is wanting to make each sentence perfect as I go and can't easily move on when something is not perfect. So I really struggle with not editing as I'm going. But then once I do have something written, just the idea of having to go through it so many times and adjust and adjust and adjust, I don't know. It shouldn't bother me because of my background. It's just like marking an essay and rewriting it, except it's, like 200 times longer than a normal essay or something. So, yeah, it shouldn't bother me, but yeah, I struggle with editing. I have a lot of self confidence during the writing stage, and I have a lot of self confidence when it comes to the grammar and the sentence construction and the flow of the actual writing. But when it comes to the character development and the relationships and things like that, bizarrely, I have like zero confidence at all. So I'm never sure whether I'm improving the story or just changing it. And it's still just as bad, but now in a different way. I know that sounds really odd, but yes, these are the downsides of being an author, folks. The little foibles we have. And yeah, people sit there and go, but that's crazy because it reads really well. I'm like, yeah, but I don't think it does until you all tell me that it does.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard probably because you're really critical of your own self and your work and like your inner dialogue, and then you give it to somebody else to read, and they don't hear all that inner dialogue, so they're like, "This is amazing," and you're like, "Oh, okay." Like it wasn't at the time because I had all these thoughts running through my head.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly, exactly. But yeah, editing's the hardest bit. That and marketing, because believe it or not, with my weird sense of humor and everything, I'm not brilliant at speaking up about myself, which is weird. Again, English teacher, I'm great at standing up in front of a room full of people and giving them a talk about something. But yeah, saying about my own work, read this, it's fabulous.
yeah. I think everybody kind of struggles with that probably.
Yeah,
Talking about yourself because we're always kind of taught not to. Like from when we were kids, like you ask
yeah.
the other person how they're doing, you talk about them, and so then now you're like, I have to talk about myself. Like, what do you mean?
No, I've just remembered the hardest bit is writing author bios. Oh my word. Marketing, you can just about get through and things like that because you've got, like, if it's an interview like this, you've got other people to bounce off and that's fun. And, with other things, your writer buddies will like cheer you up beforehand and get you onto the stage. But author bios, oh my word, they're a nightmare to write because it's literally you on a piece of paper writing about yourself. And if
Yeah,
I could pay someone else to write those for me, I absolutely would. I have 8 what I call my fun bios on a sheet of paper, And there are times when someone has said to me, I need an author bio from you and I need it quickly. And I have, in protest, written these very me bios. They're sarcastic as anything. And they're things like, I've been told I have to write 50 words about myself. And I hate doing this. And Dave won't do it for me, even though I've tried to bribe him with chocolate. But now I've filled most of that, so I'm done. Bye. Or, Lauren Salisbury was supposed to, sorry, knocked my computer. Lauren Salisbury was supposed to write a bio about herself, but she went upstairs and watched Firefly reruns to put it off, and now she's having to do it last minute. So if you can figure out how she's going to use an MA in teaching during an author career, post us on a stamp. Bye. Those sorts of things. I've got 8 of them. And I'm thinking about putting them out, one in different places, and then having like a treasure hunt type thing or a scavenger hunt for answers to certain questions, and then people will win a book of mine for getting them all right.
I love that. That's a creative idea.
I haven't quite had the guts to put them on the back of my books yet. I really want to, but on their own would be really odd. Who knows? I might do special editions.
Yeah, at the very back, you could do that. Not maybe on the back side, but like at the very back, you could put it in as like a little fun
Every
thing.
special edition will have one of my fun bios.
Yeah.
That is usually like, I can talk about food. I have a whole one about food. Like, what can Lauren H. Salisbury say about herself? She loves food. Cheese is her favorite. She'll eat it on blah, 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 blah.
I love that. That's great. You should totally do that. So then on the flip side, what's your most favorite part about writing?
The pantsing planning, following the characters around and the ideas popping into my head. Yeah, that and people's reaction to those ideas when they get to the little plot twist. Yeah, that's got to be my favorite. But yeah, the actual writing process, my favorite part is definitely during the planning stages where those little ideas come to me and I just get so excited I can barely keep up with writing them down.
Yeah.
So much fun.
So when you were writing opposite sex, those characters, did you struggle with that at all? Having that perspective shift when you're writing about them?
To begin with, maybe. The main character, like Maddie, I knew better than Luke to begin with, so it was easier writing her. But after a couple of chapters, as I got to know Luke better, it was fairly easy to shift because, when you're writing a chapter a day, each day you just start fresh and I just immerse myself in that character. I can't finish writing one chapter in one perspective and move straight into the other perspective. I can't do that. I have to finish for the day and then the next day come back and write from the other perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And switching to Joss has been weird as well from Maddie because I've spent so long from Maddie's point of view writing Joss as a third person, and now I'm writing Joss as the first person and Maddie's third, and
Yeah, switching the perspective of who's talking is probably
it's
hard
to begin with, but it's fun. I like it. I like getting that different perspective, and I like living in different characters' heads. So
yeah.
That's
Are
fun.
they very loud in your head?
Sometimes, yes, sometimes very much so. And usually when I'm getting into it and it's speeding up, it's because they're constantly swimming around. Yeah. Then I have other characters, minor characters saying, no, I want to be a major character and I've got to have my own book now. Tristan did that. Tristan now has his own, I'm keeping it a short story no matter what happens. It's not going to be a full novel. But he now has his own story because he just kind of muscled in there.
Yeah. Well, he's a good character, so it'll be good to have a little bit of him on his own and center stage for sure.
Yeah.
So what's the hardest types of scenes for you to write?
Abuse. Abuse is a very hard thing for me to write. Most other, I would say, like negative themes aren't so difficult because I know that the characters are going to overcome them in the end. So because of that, it gives me the ability to push through. But I do find abuse very, very difficult to get through because I've got to immerse myself in the story, and immersing myself in that is not pleasant. I cannot write whipping scenes at all. You will never ever get a whipping scene in one of my stories. I know it's not a theme, but you'll never get one of those because I just can't. I hate it. It's just, yeah. It's the one thing that I like, nope, nope, thank you. I'd rather chop someone's entire ear off, or no, maybe ear, that's weird. I'd rather chop someone's entire arm off than have a whipping scene because it's bullying. I thought I was bullied in school quite severely. So I thought that I would find that very difficult to write, but actually I found it easier. Sounds weird, but yeah, I found it easier. It was almost like just therapy on a page.
Yeah, cathartic, probably. Letting it go, letting it out there.
Yeah. I mean, I'd already dealt with it by the time I came to write that. But yeah, it was almost, I don't know, I wouldn't call it therapeutic because, like I said, I'd already dealt with it and let it out, but it was cathartic in the sense of anyone else going through the same thing is going to feel seen, and hopefully it'll give them the courage to get through it. I think that was, yeah, that was the main thing with that. And because of that, it made it much easier to write than I thought it was going to be. But yeah. And bizarrely, I find romance kind of difficult to write. She says, romance author here. I find romance the most difficult. Yeah, I don't know why. I think I'm rubbish at it, but everybody says I'm not, so I'm okay then.
You write very good tension and angst and like that moment push and pull and
Yeah,
like that you did really good build up.
thank you. I do enjoy writing that. I have a very clear line that I won't cross, mainly because my mum is my alpha reader. And there are just certain things that I cannot write knowing my mum is going to read it. I remember in the second book that I ever wrote, I had a married couple and they just got married. She's very shy, but they go off into, they're slaves, so they go off into the wilderness together to have their honeymoon night. And she's standing there quite nervous and not knowing what to do. And he slowly slides his hands around her middle and, hugs her and then moves his arms up. And my mum read that scene and went, no, no, you need to cut some of this out because it's a bit too much. And at that point, I was like, okay. That one was written for her. She'd asked about those characters. They were side characters again in my first novel. And she'd asked about them. She said, these are my favorite. I want a book about them. So I wrote that book for her. So I thought, well, it's her book. I'll stick with her levels. But also, when I was trying to read it out loud to her, I was like, yeah, you're right. I cannot do this with you. I cannot, yeah, I just cannot. There's a certain line I cannot go beyond when I'm reading something out loud to my mother.
Yeah, I've asked that to other authors when they have more spicy scenes, and I'm like, how do you do that? Like, isn't it like? And they're like, yeah, my mom's read everything, and I'm just like, I would be so like embarrassed. I think for
Yeah,
me, at least, that I'm like, I couldn't do it. But
yeah,
all power to them, like whatever your comfort level is, for sure. But I'm just like, nope, nope.
yeah. My comfort level is different from my mum's, but I'm not going to go beyond that because my nieces now read my work as well. So
Yes.
between my nieces and my 72-year-old conservative Christian mother, it will be closed door. You'll get tension, you'll get angst, you will get kissing, but it's not good. The door is always going to close because otherwise I'm going to find myself feeling like I'm 10 years old again, staring at the bookcase when anyone is kissing on the TV because we're all too embarrassed to actually watch it in front of each other. We'd all watch it on our own. My my family discovered that we did this. All of us, me, my mum, and my sister, would watch things on TV, and all of us, unbeknownst to the others, would look at the same book on the bookcase whenever people were kissing on the TV because we were too embarrassed to be caught watching it by the other people in the room. And then we were talking about it when we were grown ups, and I was saying, yeah, whenever I watched anything with you, I always used to look at that book on the bookcase, and my sister went, oh, me too, and my mum went, me too. So yeah, yeah. A family of shy.
What is your most favorite scene to write?
Ooh, favorite scenes in general or specifically? I like writing action scenes. My husband says I'm very good at those. He thinks I'm better at those than anything else. He's like, do less of the romance and the angst, just do action stories. So I do enjoy writing those. The sword fighting, not quite so much, because although I've done a lot of research on it, it's, not exactly something that I have a lot of experience with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, how do you describe it? So I'm there doing pretend sword fights with my mum and stuff, which is fun. Specific scenes that I have really enjoyed. Oh, the banter. That's my favorite. What am I saying about action scenes? Forget the action scenes. The banter. The
Yes.
banter is my favorite. And one of the things that I really loved about Luke and Maddie is that they would actually do banter. Like, have a very dry wit in real life, and everybody's always telling me I'm really funny. But in the past, my characters have refused to do anything funny at all. I'm like, they're very serious characters. I'm like, why? Why? Why can't you just be like me and be sarcastic and, flippant and irreverent all the time? They're like, no. But Maddie and Luke really kind of went with
No, they
it.
do. They definitely do. You had some very good banter,
Yes, I love,
jabs, and they just like they laid it all out. It was
yeah,
good. It was really,
love banter. A Matter of Blood has some good banter as well. I mean, the others do have banter, just not as much. I think I've got better at making my characters do it as I've written. From first book to the latest book, you can definitely see my journey as an author. And I have occasionally thought about redoing the first two books. I'm happy with all the others, but the first two, I'm like, I could write so much better now. But then I think, no, because if you read Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, you can see the difference between his first book and his last book. And I'm like, well, if it's good enough for Sir Terry, it's good enough for me.
yeah.
If they want to read my backlist, they can see how I have grown as an author. Just be aware, please, folks. I'm not that bad now.
So, who inspired your writing journey, or did you always want to be a writer?
I always wanted to be a teacher. But I realize that's because I've always wanted to work with stories. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, you're like, I want to be a teacher, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a ballerina, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a chef. But it always came back to that. So I never thought I would do anything else in my entire life. It was a vocation. I was very good at being a teacher. I honestly thought I'd do it for life. And then a couple of things happened. I wanted to move up here to help look after my parents. You can't do that when you're in full-time work. So then I was like, I quit my teaching job and went into tutoring. I was like, what on earth do I do now? And the kids in school, whenever I taught them creative writing, I'd just write stories on the board. And they'd always go, wow, that's really good, miss. Do another one. Um, and then, so when my husband was, talking to me about what I was going to do next, he said, why don't you try writing? You enjoy it. The kids always say that you should write. So I was like, okay. So I gave it a go and it just poured out of me and I love it. Yeah, I am so lucky to have had two careers that I absolutely love doing. Yeah, just so blessed for that because I absolutely love it. And now I can't imagine my life not writing anymore. Yeah, so inspiration probably comes from my family reading to me all those different stories. So, it's everything from Jane Austen to Shakespeare to Tolkien to Terry Pratchett, um, all sorts of different genres. I've read historical fiction. I read a lot of. My dad got me into that. My mum got me into fantasy and sci-fi reading. So yeah, there's a lot of inspiration out there.
Is there an author that you gravitate towards?
There are a few. C.J. Sansom is a favorite from historical fiction. I used to. I'm sorry, I'm even looking at my shelves. They're not even my shelves, they're my mum's shelves, and I'm still looking over there for ideas. This is hard because I'm not in front of my shelves. I'm trying to think. I should think of some in the fantasy romance genre, really, rather than stating all these other genres. I'll tell you what I do like. It's maybe not an inspirational one, but it is an author that I've really enjoyed reading recently, is Jessica Spruill. Yes.
Out of all of your characters, which one is most like you?
Probably a cross between Masan, who is one of the characters from my first series, and Mouse in The Wolf King. Cross between those two. Mouse spends all of her time in the library, which is very much like me. She's very quiet, which used to also be very much like me. And Masan had a lot of the same experiences that I had. Not necessarily intentionally, he just came out that way. So yeah, it was very odd writing him. He started out as a baby in the first book, and by the time he grew into his adulthood, we shared a lot of similar traits. Yeah, more than more than I thought at the time. Rereading it back, I think, oh my word, I've put so much of myself into this person. So yeah, cat and mouse.
So, what's your favorite trope to read and or
I'm really having a lot of fun with the only one bed trope. I kind of enjoy reading it, but writing it is even more fun. But I'm doing little twists on it, so the next one, instead of only one bed, it's only one wardrobe. Yeah.
cute?
I cannot wait to write that scene. I know exactly what happens in that scene, and I cannot wait to write it. Stuck in a wardrobe together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. That'll be great to read. So, when you were writing like the plot twists, do you know that they're going to happen, or are the characters like leading you there?
Some of them I know will happen from the very get-go. Some, again, it's mostly during the planning stages, but yeah, some are a complete surprise to me. Complete surprise. Like the latest one for this book too, that was a complete. I did not know that was going to happen at all. Oh my word. I've got to write this down quick. But yeah, I love it when that happens. Because it's kind of get the same idea as the readers do. I'm surprised by it instead of knowing. I always feel really disappointed that I know the answer before it comes along.
So, did you have that moment where you're like,
Yes.
yes?
Yes. Yes. 1 o'clock in the morning, but yes. And it was fantastic. And then he did something else. I was like, oh my word, you're blowing my mind. That's even worse, but it's even better. And I love it.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that sooner?
Yeah. Very diabolical.
Yeah, that's actually happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's probably a very rewarding feeling that after you write it, you're like, that came out of me. Like, I did this. That was really cool. I enjoy that, and I'm going to see other people get there and have their reactions to it. So,
I'm getting excited just thinking about it now and hearing you say all of that. I'm like, yes, I cannot wait. Katie, get ready.
yes. I love plot twists. I think more than I like cliffhangers, but I like them when the book that's preceding it is coming out soon. I don't like it when I get a cliffhanger and then I'm dangling off that cliff for a year and then the book comes out and then I'm like, like I've waited so long.
Yeah,
So
I
I
know
love,
exactly what you mean.
yeah. So I love plot twists, I think, more than I enjoy. I mean, I do like cliffhangers sometimes, but they have to be like, because otherwise I'm sad and then it like spirals.
Yeah, I cannot read cliffhangers if the next book isn't out already. I have a friend who writes, and she writes cliffhangers, and I've been dying to read her series, but I know that each one is going to have a cliffhanger until the last one, so I've got to wait until they're all out and then read them all in one go because I just do
Yeah.
can't do cliffhangers. Yeah, it's too.
There's one book that I didn't know was going to be cliffhanger. They didn't advertise it as a cliffhanger, and then I read it, and it was a really big cliffhanger. And I went to look it up, and there's not even a mention of when the next book is coming out. Like it's not even a blip on their profile saying like it's coming out soon. And I was so heartbroken because I'm like,
See, all these memes about the tears of your readers, that scenario is what that refers to in my mind.
exactly, it totally does. So when you were designing the cover, did you enjoy that process? Being the creative background?
I didn't actually have, I had a few ideas for the cover, but I told them to the cover designer and then went, do whatever you want because I trust you. You're very good at your job. And she just knocked it out of the park. Like my covers in the past, I've had good covers, but there's always been something that I have needed to have been tweaked or changed. There was not a single thing on this. She sent me the draft and I spent 2 days looking at it and I could not find a single thing that I wanted to change. So I was like, nope, I'm sorry, you're done.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And I can't wait for her to design the next one. I've got a booked in for the next one already, even though I'm not supposed to.
beautiful cover. It really is very pretty. I love the detailing on it. Like, it just gives the vibe of what the story is about. It's
It's
really, really well
moon press design. Awesome. Awesome woman. Yeah, I mean, I knew I didn't want characters on the front, and I knew that there should be some reference to the shield and the wolf in there, and I was thinking maybe like crossed daggers or something behind. I don't know. But yeah, what she did was I loved it. And I loved the scrolling around the edge, but it's not too girly or anything because, there's a lot of flower work out there and that really did not suit the vibe of the book. But yeah, that scrolling is perfect around the edge. Yeah,
done.
I
It's
just
beautiful.
absolutely love that cover. I still look at it every once in a while, pull it up just to look. Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, I'm
February.
excited. I'm excited to see it. So, what, in your opinion, makes a great story?
What makes a great story? Lots of tension, lots of banter, and great plot twists. And a happy ever after, or at least a resolution, because I don't like cliffhangers. Yeah, perfect. That's the perfect story for me.
Yeah.
Lots
So,
of
what's the most
thrills
surprising thing that you've learned on your writing journey?
that I can write. No, well, that too. See, I can't get that out of my head now. This is the problem with being flippant. The serious answers just disappear. Okay, the most surprising thing in my writing journey is how it brings people together, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, talking about books that you love and sharing books that you love with other people and just joining in the community and talking about your book with other people and getting excited together and all the different people that you work with on that book who then you have these relationships with that you never would have met them if you weren't doing this. They're all creatives, they're all interested in the same things that I am, and it's just great. Any other job, and you wouldn't necessarily get on with your co-workers because you've got nothing in common other than your job. But this job, the people that you work with are all into exactly the same things that you are. So it just makes the whole experience way more fun, way more fun. And I have made so many more friends on this writer's journey than I ever did as a teacher. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing for my teaching career. I did have friends. I'm not a complete loner or loser. But yeah, these friends are lifelong and we just have so much in common. It blows my mind every time I think about it. On the reader side and on the behind the scenes side as well.
Do you feel like that's like your favorite part about being a writer, is the relationships you've made?
Yeah, absolutely. Your relationship and your character, there's the only things that you take with you when you leave this planet. I can't take the books with me, I can't take the money with me, but I can take my character and I can take all the relationships and the memories. So that is absolutely always more important to me.
Yeah, that's really, really great. So, how has your publishing changed from that first book that you put out versus like this one? Have you changed a lot in how
Yes,
you do it?
absolutely. The first book I queried with a couple, had no idea what I was doing back then. I literally just wrote this book and was like, I'll send it out. So I sent it out to a couple of publishers to query. And then while I was waiting to hear back from them, I sent it out to a reader in, I think it was a Goodreads group, and said, would you mind having a read of this to see what you think? Want to know roughly what other people are going to think of it. And she said, this is great. Can I send it to my daughter? It's like, okay, sure. Why? And I looked her up, and her daughter works with an independent publishing company that helps indie authors. And the woman that I'd asked to read it, I did not know this, and I really should have. I realise now. Looked her up, but yeah, she was an award-winning author as well herself, and she was just part of this group that I randomly said, "Can anyone look at this book?" And she said, "Sure." So yeah, she gave it to her daughter, and her daughter got in touch with me and said, I would like to help you publish this book, and I would like to edit for you for free. So for free? She said, yeah, just pay it forwards. So I thought, wow. And then at the same time, there was another member of the same group who said, I'm taking a break from my job. I'm a graphic designer. If anyone in this group, I just want to do some fun stuff. If anyone in this group wants a cover, I'll do it for $5. I thought, this must be a sign. I'll get free editing and a cover for $5. So that first book, I took it back from the publishers and said, I'm sorry, I'm not having, I'm I'm not traditionally publishing this one anymore. And I think I put it out for about £50 total is how much I spent on that first book. And I did everything myself. I didn't know to do anything else. And I made so many mistakes with it. Every mistake you could do, I did. But yeah, I put it out there and people read it and people enjoyed it. And I loved the process. So I just kept doing it and kept doing it. And then as I learned, I was like, okay, there are things that you can do to actually make this smoother and to, you know, to get your writing to a better degree, because people who think that English teachers are naturally good writers, it's a totally different skill set. You know, I'm very good at the grammar side of it. You hopefully won't find too many typos in my books. There's not many that go through. So that side of it, I'm okay. But the actual writing of it, you know, I taught people to write 1.5-page stories, not full-length novels. It's a completely different skill set. So yeah, I decided I was going to learn the craft more. So I went on courses and I joined groups and I got critique partners, and the learning curve was very steep. I said this earlier, but if you read the first book to now, it's completely different. But even if you read like the first book to the second book and then the second to the third, you can see how quickly I've learned. It was a very steep learning curve, but also the behind the scenes stuff, like the marketing of it, the, you know, how much money you spend making it work. Obviously, I couldn't do any of the others as cheaply as the first one, although I do swaps now for editing, so that cost is still kept down. But yeah, it's a whole different game now than it was back then. I think I'm a lot more professional. I know what I'm doing a lot more, and the writing is a lot tighter. It's a lot tighter. I'm so proud of the changes that I've made to my writing as I've gone through these books. Every single one, I can honestly say this is my best book yet. And I'm being honest, 100% honest, because the stories are more complex, the characters are more developed, you know, the writing's tighter, the style is better. I'm more relaxed with it as well, so it's more fun.
That's really, really great. So, with reviews, do you read them or do you kind of steer clear of them?
Sometimes I read them. Sometimes I can't help myself. So, for instance, Amazon, when you get a certain number of reviews, will start pushing your book through the algorithm to more people. So I do tend to check when I've got a new book out, check and see how many reviews it's getting, because I'm desperate to get it to that number. So that then you end up reading them. I try not to read the negative ones too closely, although there have been a couple that I've thought, actually, that's fair. I'm going to change that in the next one. So keep reading, person who gave me a low star rating, because, you know, I'm going to do better next time and you'll like it. Not that they will, but whatever. So yeah, it does depend. Sometimes, especially the first few books, any even slight, like they could be 4 or 5 star reviews, but any slight negative thing that they said, I'd really take it to heart. But so yeah, I had to learn not to do that. But yeah, so it's sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But I'm not somebody that definitely stays away from all of them. I like getting that feedback, because that's the fun part for me, is people saying, you know, I love this bit, that was so cool, and I can't wait for the next one. It really gives me that boost to keep going. So I can't ignore them completely. But if I could convince all of my readers to do that in DMs, then I wouldn't need to read the reviews. I could just look at the number and push the numbers up to that magical thing and ignore the actual reviews. That would be great, people. So here's, you know, your little request from me.
Notice on that.
Yes, big sign. If you like my books, DM me as well as leave a review.
Because then I can chat with you and talk about my book.
Yeah. Oh, I will respond to anyone and everyone who wants to talk about my books. The problem will be shutting me up, not having me respond, people. Yeah. I know readers are like, oh my word, the author actually wrote back. And we're on the other end going, oh my word, a reader wrote to me.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wrote to you about this interview. And, exactly. And I was like, she wrote me back right away.
That was exactly me on the slip side. You're like, I noticed you said she wrote me back straight away. And I'm like, yeah, I've got to write it back straight away. She might change her mind.
I love that. I love that we had the same
Yep.
exact
Same
reaction.
reaction. Going into the room going, Dave, look, someone wants to interview me. And then he's like, why? Be normal. Just make sure you're normal. Okay, I'll try.
Okay. Well, no. This question, you don't be normal for this question. This is that was a perfect caveat to that. So, what is something unique or quirky about you that we don't know?
I'm allergic to my own hair and all human hair. So, you know how people have allergies to dog hair and things like that? Yeah, I'm allergic to human hair, which is really bad when you grow up wanting to be Rapunzel because I refused to have my hair cut at all when I was growing up. It was long enough for me to be able to sit on it, but I always had to have my mum brush it for me because it made my nose itch. And she thought I was being lazy just asking her to brush it because I didn't want to do it myself. So she hacked it all off. And then when I was 14, we went to the doctors and I happened to mention the fact that my hair made my nose itchy. And she said, you've probably got allergic rhinitis. And we went out of the doctor's surgery. My mum turned to me and just went, I am so sorry. But yeah, I tend to have it cut short now, or at least. But I've also had my nose cut short. Yeah, nosebleeds and everything from it.
Wow.
It was pretty bad, but I've had my nose fixed so it can't bleed anymore. So that's not so bad.
Well, that's good.
Something else quirky, I speak Arabic.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned you lived overseas. Oh, well,
Yeah, I
more
lived
overseas for me over there.
I lived in Beirut, Lebanon for a year and a half. I love to travel. Absolutely love to travel. Dave and I still like to have winters abroad if we can, where it's warm. But yeah, I lived in Beirut for a year and a half. I worked at a school over there. So it was fantastic. One of the best places I've ever lived. The food is brilliant. The food is in a lot of my novels. Yeah, it was just great, people friendly, fabulous place to live. Safe as well. The crime rate is virtually zero. So, yeah,
And then you can incorporate it into your stories, which is great.
yes. And I have heavily. But yeah, if people want to talk to me about misappropriating that particular culture, no way. I lived there. Yeah, I was fully in that culture. I know that culture well.
There's a lot of history there and a lot of storytelling, even out of that area, too. Really rich storytelling.
Yeah,
So it's probably provided a lot of inspiration.
yeah, I absolutely love it. So, yeah, it's fabulous. Fabulous place to live. Fabulous place to visit. If anyone wants to go, I recommend Easter because you can sunbathe on the beach in the morning and then you can drive up into the mountains and go skiing. Yeah.
I did not. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. Even though it's in the Middle East, Lebanon has five, I think it is, ski resorts. And because it's built on the ocean, but there are, massive mountains about a quarter mile inland. And when you go up, it's like Middle East hot, 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 hot. And then there's virtually a line and it goes from almost desert-like dry barren land to 6 foot snow and then beyond. We
Amazing.
took school trips up there for skiing. Yeah.
So much fun. What a cool adventure to have happen to you. That's great. So,
Many stories.
sorry, what?
Many stories from
Many
there.
stories, yes. That's great. So, how do you unwind after you finish writing and you've gotten a book out? Do you do anything?
Sleep, eat, always with the food. Always with the food. Food is life. So usually some sort of food, might go out for a treat. I read a lot because I can't read while I'm writing. It interferes with my own story too much. So I I'll read while I'm planning, but then I'll go zero books while I'm actually writing. And as soon as I finish writing, I'll dive in and I will easily read a book and a half in a day because I'll just sit there and read and it'll be getting dark outside and I won't have bothered turning the light on and my husband will come in and go, what are you doing? You're sitting in the dark reading and I'm peering at it like this, squinting because it's so dark, but I still haven't twigged to actually turn the light on or eat all day. So yeah, he could talk to me and it's like, there's nobody here. I'm in the world, just. So yeah, I'll do that.
Not currently here. My brain is somewhere else. Try later.
Yeah, I have told him that repeatedly. If I'm reading, there's not much point talking to me because I'm not going to hear you. And yet he still tries. Okay. But yeah, so I'll read for like a week to a month, and then I'll get back into the writing again because I've got to if I want to get a book out. So yeah, I go like that.
A good break to just dive into another world. So you're coming out with, well, you're working on book 2, so we'll see that probably sometime next year.
Yes.
And then book 3 the following. That's
Yes,
planned
that's
for
the
right now.
plan. That's the plan. I'm hoping to get some short stories out in between. Not sure how it will go. It will depend on how easily book 2 gets written. Give it a little tweak and hope that it responds. Prod it a few times. Bribe her with chocolate. I don't know. I think Joss would respond to
The way to
chocolate.
go. Chocolate's always the way to go.
Yeah, Joss would absolutely respond to chocolate. Yeah,
You
Joss
even
would
have
respond to
a
anything.
scene about that. I'm not going to give anything away, but there is even talk of that in the first book. So she
Yeah,
totally used chocolate.
she absolutely would. Or bribe her with sneaking her out of the palace. That would get Joss as well. In fact, that's where we're
Bring on an
starting.
adventure.
That's where we're starting in book 2. Chapter 1 starts with her having sneaked out of the palace and trying to sneak back in without getting caught. So there you go.
I can't wait to have her book. So my last question for you is, what message do you want readers to take away after they've read your book?
Message. We all have value. That's going to come through in this series a lot, I think. We all have value. That doing things with other people is better than trying to do them on your own. Family matters. Family is important. Found family or real family. That's probably the strongest message I want to come through from this series. In terms of emotions, kind of want people to go, that was fun. That's the emotion I want. I want them to put it down and just go, man, that was fun. Yeah,
Definitely, you've achieved that for sure.
I'm so glad.
Well, thank you again so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me.
You're
And
welcome.
phenomenal books. If you have not read this book, definitely do it. The Wolf King is amazing, and I just loved it. I enjoyed it so much. I'm excited to hear about what's next for the girls and the next adventure and shenanigans they get into. I know it'll be great. If you have a book bestie that you think would like this book, please forward this interview along. Or if you know, enjoy any of the kind of things that we've talked about today with writing, the writing process, any advice and tips, other people that you know that might be authors and wanting to hone in their craft, definitely pass that along, and be sure to check out her page. I linked her information below where to find her, and follow her on Instagram, and be sure to like and subscribe, and join me next time as we get another look behind the book. Thank you again very much.
Well, thank you. It was wonderful being here.
Thank you so much. It was been an honor. Bye.
Bye.